Hi, welcome back to TFT, Truth Fairy Tidbits, where I, the Truth Fairy, attempt to feed you bite-sized pieces of information that you normally wouldn't look at otherwise in attempt to help to deprogram the status mind, like it helped to deprogram my status mind several years ago. If you haven't been here before, please go back, start at the beginning of my videos, or you're going to be completely lost and not understand what the hell we're talking about, all right? So, getting right back into it. This next section, we've talked about how the government, he's been making it very, very clear. Government is illegitimate. It's immoral. The Constitution is not binding upon anybody. And so continuing on in another example of how the Constitution is not binding. This will be pretty short. Okay. The Constitution not only binds nobody now, but it never did bind anybody. It is a general principle of law and reason that a written instrument binds no one until it has been signed. The principle is so inflexible a one that even though man is unable to write his name, he must still make his mark before he is bound to a written contract. This custom was established ages ago when few men could write their names. Even at that time, a written contract must still be signed, and men who could not write either made their mark or they signed their contracts by stamping a seal upon wax affixed to the parchment on which their contracts were written. Neither law nor reason requires or expects a man to agree to an instrument until it has been written, for until it is written, he cannot know its precise legal meaning. The fact that the instrument was written for him to sign, or with the hope that he would sign it, goes for nothing. Where would the end of fraud and litigation be if one party could bring into court a written instrument without any signature and claim to have it enforced upon the ground that it was written for another man to sign, or that this other man had promised to sign it, or that he ought to have signed it, or that he had the opportunity to sign it? Yet that is the most that could ever be said of the Constitution. Very few judges who profess to derive their authority from the Constitution the very few judges who profess to derive their authority from the Constitution would spurn any other instrument not signed that should be brought before them. You try to bring in a contract and get a judge to enforce it. When the other person, supposedly in the contract, never signed it, it ain't going to work. Judges will throw it out. Moreover, a written instrument must, in law and reason, not only be signed, but it also must be delivered to the party whose favor it is made before it can bind anybody to the party. No, bind the party to the contract. The signing is of no effect unless the instrument be also delivered. Good example in real estate. I'm a realtor. You have the person who makes an offer on the house. They make an offer, they sign it, they send it to the person selling the house. They accept the offer, they also sign it. That still means nothing, even though you have two signatures, okay? That contract that the accepted party signed still has to be sent back to the person who made the offer. Even then, they have to sign saying that they received the accepted offer, and only at that point does that contract become binding. At that point, they could have a signature saying they agreed to the offer. The buyer gets that contract back. They could decide, you know what, I changed my mind, and not sign that they received it, and that contract has no validity whatsoever. Okay, just making that point that is still a thing today. You have to have both parties agreeing and signing. The person making the offer has to get that delivered back to them, and they also have to acknowledge that they received it. Okay, the Constitution was not only never signed by any of us, but it was never delivered to anybody by anybody. It can therefore be of no more validity as a contract than can any other instrument that was never signed or delivered. Okay, that's the short section right there. So just yet another point making that the Constitution is not a valid anything to bind any of us to anything, because we would have to have it in writing, first of all, understand what it means, decide to sign it. The other person who created it would have to sign it. Then we would all have a copy of it with everybody's signature. It would have to be delivered back to us to be a binding thing. It's not, okay? He's going to continue on. I might skip through a little bit more after today because if you want to get this book, I suggest that you get it. No Treason by Lysander Spooner. Read the whole thing. It goes thoroughly into these ideas. This man was brilliant. Okay. So back to the main point of all of this, and what I'm doing is to try to, a starting point to start to deprogram the statist mind. And I think getting you to understand how none of this is legitimate in the first place is a good starting point, because this is all very logical things when you actually stop and think about it. And this is what started me into the process of deprogramming, because I was like, well, fuck, this makes sense. Why do we have a government that nobody consented to? So yeah, the main points being that government is illegitimate because none of us consented to it. Voting does not equal consent. Taxes do not equal consent. Voting is actually an act of aggression, as we've already covered, because by voting, you are trying to use the government to do the things that you want done to your neighbor. And they're voting to have the government do nasty things to you on their behalf. So the fact that you're using government to do the things that you want done against people who don't want those things done, that's an act of aggression, okay? So voting is illegitimate, or voting is immoral. It does not mean you consent to anything. It's an act of aggression. I have my little notes here. Trying not to go off on tangents today. So yeah, all we have is a theft-funded ruling class. That's all government is. It is funded by theft, extortion, coercion, and it's just a group of rich fucks that somehow we think is legitimate and necessary. We'll get into that later. Again, and another point about voting, which I think I've said before, but this is the system we have. You have to work within the system. If you don't like the system, vote harder. Okay. If voting changed anything about the system would not let you vote. Okay. It's that easy. Also, if voting changed anything, wouldn't something be changed by now? How long have people been voting? Like 200 years or something? Nothing has fucking changed. We have more, actually, every single time. You get more tyranny, more theft, more government. That's all we ever get, is a theft-funded, tyrannical ruling class of psychopaths. When is it gonna change anything? 200 years have gone by, okay? Vote harder. We just need the right people in there. Yet every 4 years, we still need the right people. Like, where the fuck are the right people? Because they're not in government, I can tell you that much. Okay. We will get into, I promise, because I know where your brains are going. If you've made it this far with me, hopefully something is sparking. You've got little sparkles going on in your head, and your programmed responses are coming out, which is, what's the alternative? How would this work? How would that work? My roads, like all of the program things that are embedded in you to come up as a block for using your own mind and realizing what the scam is. And I know what they are because I had all the same ones. So we're going to get into that, I promise. I'm just really trying to start with the basis and get you to see how logical it is, how ridiculous the system is when you actually think about it. So please, please just start thinking, please. And there's my baby. Come here. People want to see your face. Oh, you're going to be a bitch. Okay. Here she is. Yay! So tell them, Kenzie, do not comply. Do not comply. Do not comply. Bye.